You have not told most people about it. Maybe you mentioned it once, casually, and the person smiled and moved on. Maybe you kept it to yourself entirely. Maybe you have replayed it more times than you can count and still do not know what to call it. A bird came, at a moment that mattered, in a way that did not feel random, and you have been carrying that ever since. Welcome to Known by Birds. Subscribe before we go further. What we are about to cover today is something this community holds with more care than almost anywhere else I know. Stay until the end, because the last thing I want to tell you is the thing researchers say they cannot explain, and I think it will matter to you. Before we talk about what science says, I want to tell you something about what human beings across every culture and every century have believed about birds. In ancient Egypt, the soul leaving the body at death was depicted as a bird, specifically a human-headed bird called the ba, shown flying out of the tomb at the moment of death and returning each night. The soul as a bird. 5,000 years ago, in Celtic tradition, birds were understood as messengers between the world of the living and the world of the dead. A bird landing on a windowsill or entering a house uninvited was a visit from someone who had passed through the bird to the person inside. In Cherokee tradition, the red bird, the cardinal, is specifically associated with the deceased. When a cardinal appears, it carries the spirit of a loved one who has passed. Not as a metaphor, as a literal belief held for generations, passed from grandparent to grandchild across centuries. In Japan, the crane. In Ireland, the robin. In West Africa, owls and doves. In Russia, the cuckoo. Different birds, different cultures, separated by oceans and centuries, and the same belief held independently in each of them, that when a person dies, something of them returns in the form of a bird. The question that every anthropologist and ornithologist eventually has to face is this: why? Why would human beings across every culture and every century independently arrive at the same belief? One answer is coincidence. Another answer is pattern recognition gone wrong. And a third answer, the one that sits at the very edge of what science can currently say, is that they were all observing the same real thing. I want to share some stories now. Stories that people have shared with the Known by Birds community and with grief researchers and with the thousands of people who have posted about this experience across the internet. Names and specific details have been adjusted to protect privacy. The experiences have not been changed. A woman in Ohio lost her father in February. He had fed the birds in his yard every single morning of her childhood. The morning of his funeral, she stood on the porch of her own house, 100 miles from where he had lived, and a cardinal landed on the railing 4 feet from where she was standing. It had never happened before. The cardinal stayed for 11 minutes. She timed it. It left when she went inside. A man in Georgia sat with his mother on the last night of her life in the hospital. He had been there for 3 days. At 3 in the morning, a bird began singing outside the window. He described it as the most unexpected thing. A bird singing in the dark outside a hospital window in winter. His mother died at 4:30. The bird sang until just before dawn. A family in Washington state had a bird, a small junco, that would come to their grandmother's window every morning. She called it her bird. She talked to it. She waited for it. When she died in her home, the junco came to the window the following morning, and the morning after, and every morning for the next 2 weeks. Then it stopped coming, completely. The family has not seen a junco at that window since. A hospice nurse in California, who agreed to share this, said that in 15 years of bedside care, she had witnessed birds appear at windows during the final hours of patients more times than she could count. Not occasionally, often. She did not have an explanation. She said, "I stopped needing one." Now I want to tell you what ornithologists and behavioral scientists actually say about this, because the science is not what most people expect. It does not dismiss the experience. In some ways, it deepens it. The first thing behavioral science tells us is this: birds are extraordinarily attuned to human emotional and physiological states. When a person is in grief, their movement slows. Their breathing changes. Their body produces physiological signals, posture, stillness, altered vocal patterns, that birds detect and respond to. Grieving people are, from a bird's perspective, the most approachable version of a human being. The second thing, site fidelity. Birds that have a territory, a yard, a garden, a window, Return to that territory with extraordinary precision for years, sometimes decades. The cardinal that your grandmother fed every morning for 15 years knows that window. It has the window mapped. After she is gone, the bird does not know she is gone. It returns to the window because it has always returned to the window, and you are standing there, in her yard, and the bird comes, because it was always going to come. The third thing, and this is the one that the researchers themselves find hardest to account for, is timing. The accounts that researchers cannot categorize are not simply birds appearing near grieving people. They are birds appearing at the exact moment of death, at the precise minute, sometimes at the window of a room in a building the bird has never visited, sometimes a species that has no known range in that region. Dr. Barbara King, an anthropologist who has spent years studying animal grief and mourning, writes that the question of whether animals have interior experiences that correspond to what we call emotion, or what we call spiritual awareness, is not a question science has closed. It is a question science has opened. The more carefully researchers look, the more they find in animals that they did not expect to find. The behavioral explanation for why birds appear in grief moments is real and documented. Grieving people are still. Stillness draws birds. The territory of a loved one who has died still holds the birds that loved one attracted. Those birds return, they find you, they stay, because you are still, and stillness is rare. That explanation is true, and it does not account for all of it. The bird at the exact window, the bird of a species never seen before. The bird that appeared the morning of the death before anyone in the house had woken up and opened a door. There is a concept in ornithology called interspecies attunement, the idea that different species can develop genuine awareness of each other that goes beyond simple behavioral conditioning, a recognition that functions, whatever we call it, like knowing. Birds that have known a human being for years, that have been present in their yard, fed from their hand, recognize their voice, have genuinely known that human being in whatever way a bird knows. And when that human being is gone, the bird that knew them still carries whatever version of knowing it had. It returns, it looks, it stays, whether that has anything to do with what we call the soul, whether the bird carries something of the person who is gone, or whether the bird is simply doing what birds do, and we are finding meaning in it because we need to find meaning in it. That is a question that science has not answered. That is a question that science may never answer. What I can tell you is what people who study grief, and people who study birds, and people who have sat with the dying, what they say when you ask them if they think birds are connected to the people who have passed. Most of them do not say no. If a bird came to you, at a funeral, at a window, in a yard, in a moment when you needed something and did not know what you needed, you do not have to explain it. You do not have to call it anything. You do not have to defend it to anyone. What I want to ask you, in the comments below, is this. Did a bird come to you when you lost someone? Tell me what bird it was. Tell me when it came. Tell me what it did. And tell me, if you want to, what you think it meant. This community holds these stories with more care than almost anywhere else I know. You are not alone in what you experienced, and you are not wrong for carrying it. I will see you in the next one.